4 minutes past 9 and we'll be back from the break. You're still watching Smart Man's Business. I'm Andrew Barrager this morning. I'm here to drive your business definitely with the latest in relation to the different business related topics. Like, of course, like I said earlier before we got into the break, that it's the budget month and we're having most of the discussions rotating around that. And I already have a guest with me. That is Mohammed Ivan. Is the Senior Programs Officer, Infrastructure and Private Sector. That is in Jiga. But of course, before we get in there, don't forget the markets on the Zabo platforms, which will be opening and which have already opened right now. Yes, *92# is simply the USSD code for you there, and you will be available with a number of options where you will be able to buy government bonds and securities for as little as 15,000 Ugandan shillings. Yes, like I said, the markets open at 8:15 and there will be a closing at 3:15 p.m. East Africa time. This is effective Monday up to Friday, except on the weekends and the public holidays when these markets can't be accessed. But despite the fact, you have the rest of the days to capitalize and make yourself quite some huge profits, and also especially if you're a trader. And this could be one of the ways to offset the possible trade deficits which you might have incurred throughout the week. Things can happen sometimes and you never know what is going to happen throughout the week. But when you trade stocks, Zabo made this a reality. Zabo simply says, my money, my future. And All Tech East Africa says, do something new for yourself come the year 2023. Well, now dwelling straight into our discussion, and of course today we are dwelling much more on financing, that is financing the infrastructure development, and of course following the 4.7 trillion, I guess, which was allocated towards infrastructure development. But then we need to really understand how this structure, whether this will be quite very effective. Mr. Ivan, a very good morning, and you're welcome to the show. And it's the budget month. Of course, the budget was read last week, but I know still, since we are starting the financial year in the next month, I think we are still into the budget, or what people call honeymoon. We are still in the budget, yes, as the month is still proceeding. Yes, now financing for infrastructure development. Maybe just from the general perspective, do you really think that this budget for the financial 2023-2024 will successfully meet that desired target when we look at infrastructure of various sectors, capital intensive and non-capital intensive?
Thank you so much, Andrew, for hosting me on this great show, The Smart Means Business. Let me first introduce myself. Good morning, our dear viewers. My name is Ivan indeed, and I bring greetings to you from the JICA, that is Japan International Cooperation Agency, where I do work. Japan International Cooperation Agency is the executing agency of the Japan's government official development assistance. What back in the days we used to call aid. It's
yes.
Old-fashioned,
okay.
Because when you say aid, it's as if someone has nothing. But we do call it development assistance. We assist. The government move forward and we assist.
Okay.
So yes, JICA, we are proud partners of the government of Uganda in development, and we are proud partners, especially in the key sectors of the economy, cutting from health, education, water and environment, agriculture, and now infrastructure. That is the topic of the day. Yes.
Very interesting.
So coming back to your question, whether the budget has meets the expectations of the infrastructure,
most especially for the 2023-2024
for this year's this coming year's budget.
Yes.
I think we first need to break down for our dear viewers to understand what is this infrastructure that we talk about. Infrastructure is quite wide a term, but for the ease of our viewers, we can break it down into, say, like five.
Yes.
We do have the commonly known transport infrastructure.
Yes.
Normally when you talk about infrastructure in Uganda, people understand transport.
And mainly roads.
And mainly roads. And there are also different modes in there. Exactly. We are looking at air, we are looking at marine, which is water, we are looking at railways. Of course, there's roads.
Planes, aircrafts.
Oh, yes. Unfortunately, most of the Ugandans are used to roads.
Of course, yes.
We haven't had a chance to really experience rail. A few of the Andrews probably have experienced air.
Air. I'm yet to experience one.
So, yes, we do have transport infrastructure. We do have health infrastructure. We do have water infrastructure. But normally, especially for the government of Uganda, focus has been on the hard infrastructure in transportation and energy. That's where the most investment has been, and those are the most capital-intensive infrastructure.
Okay.
Yes. So, looking at this year's budget and whether it has met the expectations, I think we really need to first look a bit back, our journey for infrastructure development and for financing infrastructure. Because this dates back in the 2010s thereabout, around the National Development Plan 1, where government was deliberate on investing in physical infrastructure. That was the real purpose and the main focus of National Development Plan 1. And then that was the time we had really the major trunk roads connecting Uganda to the borders, connecting to Kenya, connecting to South Sudan in the north, and actually JICA was part of that, connecting to our neighbors in Rwanda, Katuna border, and then in Tungamo, Mirama Hills, connecting Uganda to DRC, the Kisoro, Bunagana border. So that was the time when we were opening up the country to the borders. And that phase was for financing that kind of infrastructure.
Physical infrastructure.
And then we go into the phase of 2015 to around 2020, there just before COVID, where now the target shifted to infrastructure that is productive. Productive infrastructure. And that's where you see government focusing on areas like oil roads, tourism roads, urban roads, including Greater Kampala metropolitan area, where you see a number of investments, including the flyover, for example, which is financed by JICA. So that was the time when there was a shift after opening the country. Now we go into productive infrastructure. And now here in this national year's budget, I realize the focus now is shifting to transport infrastructure that facilitates the growth of the private sector.
Transport sector that facilitates the growth.
Yes, the growth of the private sector. So we've done production, we've done opening the country. Now they are focusing on the private sector growth. So I feel the trend really answers the needs of the country. Yes.
What would be, because in most cases, sometimes when you look at our economy, how it really operates, I mean, we've been having vast inflations, and all these aspects coming in all the way. And, so, sometimes, regardless of what the government proposes to do, in most cases, I can focus largely on the household, the low person, because that person should feel the impact of these programs that are really transparent. But it doesn't seem to be that way, because even when we come to the productive infrastructure, like you mentioned, because we still have a challenge that the roads, which transport, because we know that there is inter-district trade, which happens, across district borders. They are still in quite, because when you mentioned from from the National Development Plan 1 coming in, now we are 3, which is also phasing out. I think next year 4 shall be entering into 4. But you still see that there is still that sort of, the gap is still not yet bridged enough, and there is still some issues. People are losing their merchandise, there are delays. I mean, we've seen the recent saga of the Katonga. Now we had one in Karuma a few days ago. I mean, what does that really explain when it comes to putting into actual implementation of these proposed programs, most especially relating to infrastructure?
Thank you so much, Andrew. That's a very rich perspective, because you look at the infrastructure that we are building for transportation, our focus has been on roads.
Roads, yes.
And I'll give you an example. A road, we have 2 major types maybe. There's one which has a rough surface that we call bitumen surfacing. Normally that can take you up to like 7 years.
7 years.
There's
a rough surface.
Just that the one stony. Can take you for like 7 years.
Okay.
And this smooth one, which most people think is dangerous for their driving, the asphalt surfacing, can take you about 13 years thereabout.
13 years.
So when we focus on road infrastructure, which actually does not have a much longer lifespan, then you're bound to, after say 5 to 7 years, the road that you have made is already done.
Yes.
You produce a kid when the road is okay. By the time the kid reaches P2, the road is done.
It's done.
7 years is over. So I feel, yes, the gaps could be there, but from the two angles, especially which I've seen being answered in this national budget, two angles to it. One of it is maintenance.
Maintenance. Okay.
So when you build a road and you do not invest in maintaining it, it will not even give you the 7 years or the 13 years that
absolutely
I talked about.
True. I agree.
And that has been a gap in the past. But I'm seeing in this budget, focus is now on road maintenance. A lot of investment has been put. Each district has been given 1 billion Uganda shillings for maintaining the roads.
Interesting.
Then the other way is the shift now from focusing on road infrastructure to other modes.
Alternatives.
Yes, so we are seeing a lot of investment now increasing in rail infrastructure. There was about $144 million invested in this budget.
Okay.
To start seeing the meter gauge rail being rehabilitated and then later the standard gauge rail. So when we have these shifts coming in now, I think those gaps will be really bridged. But then again, don't forget that you're dealing with a poor country.
True, that is true.
It's just like how you can be walking on the streets and you see so many good things that you want to give to your wife, but your wallet cannot afford. So you just have to prioritize. You cannot cover everything. So I really feel sorry and stand with government that yes, the desire could be there, but then they are limited. So they have to think through the little resources and see how they can distribute them to try to satisfy everyone.
Yeah, you mentioned something very key, priorities, because, that can be really understandable. Most especially when it comes to the productive infrastructure, that why do we sometimes invest, you find that certain areas have the best infrastructure and it all comes as a result of political influence, simply because there is so and so in there. But yet if you are to weigh the production that comes out of there is nothing. Do we any measures to really counteract such an issue? Because I believe that could be that, it is okay, the money could be there and could be distributed and the roads are there, and of course it will be put out there, yes, that the road was constructed, but is it productive? So should we anticipate that now the disbursement of these funds for infrastructure development is going to be directed towards priority routes, which we know that if we put this infrastructure right, they shall reap from this?
Well, that's quite an interesting way of looking at how the infrastructure has been developed. Technically, it would be so wrong to me, I think, when we are selecting, say, roads to be developed, to put the geographical location as number one. It is very key for any government. They need to evenly distribute the services to the masses. But for a constrained government, developing countries like ours that do not have enough resources, I don't think they can afford to put even distribution of, say, infrastructure based on the geographical location. It would really be quite of a mistake. Yes, it is important. We cannot rule it out. But I think we need to first, indeed, as you said, prioritize. There you stand a risk of finding some areas might be in the middle of the number of priorities, and they probably will benefit much more than the others. I'll give you an example. If we are looking at, say, urban infrastructure, the one which has just ended under the World Bank.
The World Bank, yes.
The Uganda support to municipal infrastructure. You look at the number of urban centers that we have. You have Mbale, you have Jinja, Mbale for logistics because of its proximity to the border. You have Jinja, which is an industrial hub. You have Gulu, center of agricultural production. You have, say, Mbarara, same as Gulu, agricultural production. So you cannot, you realize now, so far, East has two centers. You have Jinja and you have Mbale. So you cannot say that, no, I shouldn't develop both of them because they are in the East. Okay. I probably should take away one. Yet they are so priority. They are so priority, true. So I hope really government looks into that. If there are some roads being developed because of political influence, I don't think it's the right way to go. I think we need to really focus on the priorities.
Very true. Well, that's interesting. But you see, I also look at this perspective. We are always, I mean, maintenance and constructing a road afresh, maintenance seems to be cheaper as compared to that. And what really, let me hope, this time around, once this infrastructure is put in place, because it's so interesting. I saw something on social media about Uganda's roads in the 1960s and the roads today. And it might seem like 1960 is the future and today is the past. You know, why are we even here? I mean, what brings us to this era? And should we hope at least that this time around this infrastructure, if we get it and we put it there, we ensure that we maintain it so that, because we end up borrowing much more money. IMF just confirmed some money also for us, 225 billion, I think it was today in the papers about that. I mean, looking at all that perspectives, why is there a guarantee of absolute maintenance once we establish this with the 4.5 trillion, inclusive of the 2.7 or 2.5 from the World Bank, you know, so that there is what we call return on investment. We experience it for a long run.
Yeah, honestly, as a sector, which we are part of as development partners, there is no excuse we can give for not having put a lot of emphasis on maintenance. Maintenance, yeah. I mean, the sector really is full of the technocrats, and they understand the need of maintenance. But there is really no excuse we can give there. But I understand, and I'm aware of the discussions and where we came from with all this up to now, when we are seeing now maintenance is coming up on the table. Maintenance, okay. Yes, because previously we've been really dialoguing with government to ensure that the appetite is balanced for road development and road maintenance. Road maintenance. Instead of having so much appetite for development and then you do not invest in maintenance, there you're really doing yourself a disservice. So we are really happy that now there is some movement. What we can only pray for is that for the coming budgets as well, this investment in road maintenance can be upped to about, say, 40% road maintenance, 50% development. Up to when we reach that 50-50, there we can be moving in the right direction. So but it's a good start for this budget. For this budget, eh? Yes, you're still watching Smart Men's Business, your daily Kickstarter for the day. Manju Bariji with my guest right now, Mohammed Ivan. That is the Senior Programs Officer and the Infrastructure and Private Sector. That is JICA. Yes, of course, they are great partners with government and, of course, part of this aspect of financing for infrastructure. And, of course, we've been having quite lots of discussions during this time. But now we're going to get into the break. But before we get in there, don't forget the markets on the Zabo platform. Yes, they have already opened. What are you waiting for? *292# is simply the USSD code for you, and you'll be available with a number of options where you will be able to get government bonds and securities for as little as 15,000 Ugandan shillings. Now the markets opened at 8:15 a.m. and they will be closing at 3:15 p.m. This is effective Monday up to Friday, except on the weekends and the public holidays when these markets can't be accessed. But despite the fact, well, you have the rest of the 5 days to capitalize and make yourself quite some huge incomes, something which I believe is very vital for you as an entrepreneur, a young aspiring entrepreneur, for you to invest in government bonds and securities. All you need is your mobile phone, whether it's a button phone or a smartphone. You will be able to buy government bonds and securities. Now, Zabo simply says, my money, my future. And Altec East Africa says, do something new for yourself come the year 2023-2024. Well, at 6 minutes to 9:30, let's get into the break. And of course, we shall be returning for further discussions in relation to budget infrastructure. Good morning.